going to thank you. We are recording the meetings for a presentation to anyone who wants to watch this later, but I think we've got everyone who wanted to join relatively on time here tonight. Thank you for coming out to join me. I'm your first district supervisor, Manu Koenig, and with me tonight also are two staff from the first district, analyst Shane McKeithen. Shane, if you want to just wave, thank you. And Jamie Seahorn, I don't know if she can turn her video on right now, but Jamie's with us as well.
Hi, everyone.
We did set this up as an entirely virtual meeting. We weren't sure where the weather was going to be at this exact point in time, so we wanted to just be as flexible as possible. I do make an effort to rotate these meetings throughout the first district, though, so that every neighborhood gets an opportunity to have regular focus on its particular issues. Tonight's meeting is focused on the Live Oak area. Of course, we are in the middle of a pretty historic disaster here with this string of atmospheric storms, or atmospheric rivers. So I'll start by talking about that, and we'll take Q&A specifically about that topic first, and then I'll move into some of the other items specifically related to the Live Oak area, and then we can do another round of Q&A around those topics. If this, I assume this is not anyone's first Zoom rodeo, but if you do want to ask a question, you can click the little reactions button at the bottom of your screen and click the raise hand icon there. And when it's time for questions, I'll call on people in the order that you raise your hand. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll just share my screen here. So I've got some slides. All right, can everyone see that? All right, thumbs up, thank you. All right, so like I said, we'll start with storm damage and recovery and then talk about a few other issues throughout the Live Oak area in particular, including Kaiser, the Kaiser proposal, Highway 1 groundbreaking, coastal rail trail funding, a new youth mental health crisis center, and a couple of residential projects. So first off, I mean, of course, we've been in the middle of this historic string of atmospheric river storms. The total damage to the county infrastructure just keeps rising. I mean, at our meeting on Tuesday, our Board of Supervisors meeting, the road damage was estimated at $23 million. It's up to $50 million. I assume this figure is going to keep climbing, not only as we just discover more issues, but also as we see continued damage with the next two atmospheric river storms coming in over this weekend. We've had 65 county road closures. Of course, there's also been a lot of damage to county parks, $6.8 million estimated at the moment, including 3 coastal access stairs mostly in the first district around 20th and 26th. Amazingly, 30,000 people were evacuated from the Pajaro Valley. We had discovered over the last couple days a number of what's called boils, or basically areas where water is starting to seep into the levee. So we had to do emergency repairs on those to ensure that the levee didn't fail. I think we have got it in a stable condition now, thankfully. The county has been operating 8 shelters, including, of course, the county fairgrounds, but others throughout the county. I think the fairgrounds had the most users at about 150 at one point. We've had to issue both yellow tags and red tags to buildings that are damaged. So yellow tags just mean that the building is significantly damaged and will need repairs, and the red tags actually mean that the home cannot be occupied. We are looking at extending the CZU rebuild process, where we sort of fast track some of those rebuild permits or construction permits through an additional contractor called Four Leaf that specializes in disaster recovery permits. So we'll look to try to extend that to folks who've had their homes damaged or businesses damaged in these atmospheric river storms. I mentioned the emergency repairs to the Pajaro River levee. I mean, of course, above it all, what stands out is people helping each other. This photo is both frightening but also heartwarming. This is a couple of the pastors from Hope Church in the Old Mill mobile home park in Soquel rescuing a dog on New Year's Eve when that first flood came through. As I mentioned, we've all seen some of the photos of the more obvious places like Highway 9 or the coast, but yeah, 65 road closures. It's just kind of this series of photos like this goes on and on. And as I did mention, there are 2 more storms coming in starting tomorrow. You can see this one that's closest to us should start to hit. And the sheriff has issued a high surf warning for Beach Drive, Los Olas Drive, and Potbelly Beach Road. So down in Aptos again, starting tonight and going through Saturday at 10 a.m. So we are expecting more high surf with this next storm. And then there is one more following that should keep rain coming into our region through Monday and a little bit into Tuesday, I believe. We've had 23 inches of rain since Christmas. So, our soils have been described as concrete at this point, just meaning they're solid. They can't take any more water, and any rain that's falling does go right into our creeks and rivers and can cause pretty quick dramatic rise. So we'll be keeping a close level on all the creek levels and river levels over the next few days. All this information about, including current creek and river levels, road closures, and other information about being able to volunteer or request help from volunteers. It's all available at this on the county website. This is this link here, but if you just go to the county homepage, you'll see a link right at the top. You can click for disaster resources. So a few more finer points about storm recovery. So Governor Newsom did proclaim a state of emergency on January 4th, and that allowed the National Guard to be deployed throughout the state. Biden declared a state of emergency on January 8th, and that will basically ultimately make FEMA funding available. The County Board of Supervisors ratified a disaster proclamation on January 10th, so this past Tuesday. And basically we're working with the cities to gather all the assessment of disasters throughout the county, and we'll jointly file those with FEMA requesting assistance. FEMA will fund 75% of the cost of repairs. So that's obviously way better than zero, but it's not 100%. And so one way or another, our county general fund will definitely take a hit from this. Some low-income residents are probably would be the next in line after public infrastructure. I do say long-term here on the slide, in that unfortunately we've seen for CZU victims, some of them low-income residents who applied for help are just getting funding now, 2 years after the disaster. So it can take a long time. We are doing everything we can just with resources on the ground right now. I just heard from our CAO, Carlos Palacios, that he's suggesting that we authorize another $300,000 just to put dumpsters out in communities so that there's a place to throw away trash or debris from the storms. I will be deploying those next Tuesday, is the goal, to high need areas. And if you do have need in your neighborhood, please reach out to me in my office, and we'll put those in the areas throughout the first district and ultimately throughout the whole county that are in greatest need. Really, if you have seen significant storm damage, residents and businesses, the best thing you can do right now is just start by documenting all the damage, and so that you can claim that with either insurance or ultimately if they're receiving some kind of government assistance with that through that as well. For short-term funds, really that can be deployed a lot faster, the Community Foundation has a disaster fund, and that's being distributed to small businesses. You can see an example of the form right over here on the right, where small businesses, particularly food service businesses impacted by the storms, can apply for up to $10,000 in grants. And then that fund is also being distributed to the family resource centers, such as the Live Oak Family Resource Center, as well as the Community Action Board. and we're trying to prioritize folks who have lost wages or housing from the storms. We should be able to get funds out to those people with a pretty quick turnaround of about 48 hours. I'll have more details on that application process is coming together now, but and I'll push out more details through channels as it becomes available, but you can reach out to the Family Resource Centers and Community Action Board. I mentioned also that we're organizing volunteer efforts. It's really being centralized in the volunteer center since they have the infrastructure there for a lot of people to sign up as volunteers and then to put people to work as volunteers. So you can volunteer at scvolunteercenter.org. And then if you go to that site, you'll also see not only is there an opportunity to sign up, but if your neighborhood does need flood cleanup help, you can click on that link there and request flood response volunteers. Last I heard, Volunteer Center was going to try to mobilize a lot of people for projects on Monday, which of course is Martin Luther King Day. Dr. King was dedicated his life to service, and so it's only fitting that I would try to get as many volunteers out there doing community projects on Martin Luther King Day. Some people do have the day off as well, and hopefully the rains will be a little less intense by then. So we'll see though. Best way to get involved is just to go ahead and sign up, and then you can receive notifications. Finally, I did some insurance tips. There's an organization called United Policyholders that just kind of gives you a better sense of the process and what you should be thinking about as you reach out to your insurance carrier. You can go to uphelp.org. There should be a link on their page, but you can also go uphelp.org/2023-ca.-storms, and it gives you more specific advice about how to present a claim, document what caused the damage, and other tips on working with your insurance company. You can also reach out to the California Department of Insurance for free personal assistance with your claims, or if you need to discuss issues of being underinsured. So the numbers there, 831-927-4357, or you can go to insurance.ca.gov. And if you are a renter, you can file renter insurance claims, and it may temporarily cover rent or moving expenses so that you can have a place to stay. Since this is a topic I know it's on a lot of people's minds, I wanted to pause there and see if there's any other questions, particularly about storm damage or recovery, that I can answer at this time. If you have a question, go ahead and just click the raise reactions button at the bottom of the screen and then raise hand. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I guess I will go ahead and move on. As far as stuff going on in the Live Oak community, I've been receiving a lot of questions about where the proposed Kaiser project is at. I think that the Capitola Planning Commission, which we've been, of course, dialoguing with the city of Capitola because it will impact, the proposed project would impact the city of Capitola as well. I think they listed on one of their planning commission agendas that the county was going to hear this project at the January 25th Planning Commission. That's false. So the developer is required to have another community meeting before this goes to our county planning commission. Of course, they haven't done that yet. We expect them, last I heard from them yesterday, they're planning on hosting that first thing in February. Of course, the final environmental impact report also needs to be released. And we're going to aim to release that 10 days before the county planning commission. So the tentative date right now is that is February 8th for this project to go to the planning commission, which means that the final EIR would be published January 29th. And then the developer would have to, as I said, have a community meeting before the planning commission meeting, so early February. The other piece, of course, is the access to care agreement. This is really, we have access to care agreements with all the healthcare providers in our county, including PAMP, Sutter, and Dignity Dominican. And it really just ensures that half our county is actually on some kind of government health insurance, whether it's Medicare, Medi-Cal, and so especially in our area, that government insurance just doesn't pay for the cost of service, and it's actually a significant cost that healthcare providers have to cover out of their pocket. And so we have this access to care agreement in place with those healthcare providers to make sure that everyone helps to shoulder the burden equally of those folks in our community. And so if Kaiser is interested in expanding their footprint in our community, we really want to make sure that they're held to the same standards as all the healthcare providers. And so we expect to review an access to care agreement specifically with Kaiser at the January 31st Board of Supervisors meeting. And again, we'd also want to do that before considering the project itself, just to make sure that the Kaiser is really bringing sufficient public benefit into our community with their presence. So if all that happens and the project's heard at the February 8th Planning Commission, I would expect that this would come to the Board of Supervisors at their end of February, at our February 28th meeting. Of course, as soon as the final EIR is published and the developer schedules a meeting, I'll certainly make sure those dates and that document is available to everyone that's interested. At the developer meeting, they'll also discuss proposed traffic impact mitigation projects. One thing that I heard loud and clear from previous committee meetings on this was that the neighborhood needs to be able to get in and out, particularly the Gross Road neighborhood needs to be able to easily get in and out, even in the case of potentially increased traffic. And so having a light at South Rodeo Gulch, it seems like one traffic impact improvement that would be necessary. We're also looking at potential contributions towards sidewalks along Soquel Avenue and some other projects, but that'll be discussed in more detail at the developers community meeting. Another thing, of course, that is related to, in many ways, to development in this area in general, but to the Kaiser project as well, is that the Highway 1 auxiliary lane bus on shoulder project from Soquel Drive to 41st Avenue will actually finally be breaking ground this February. Might get pushed back a little bit because of the rain, but I think we're still going to make the February window. So you can see that highlighted here as phase 1 on this map. And we're working on this bus on shoulder auxiliary lane project, pushing it all the way out to Freedom, to the Freedom Boulevard exit, where the highway coming up from Watsonville goes from 3 lanes down to 2 lanes, so that we can basically remove that lane reduction and have traffic flow more freely throughout this corridor. The phase 1 project also includes, that it's about to break ground, of course, also includes the Chanticleer Avenue bike ped overcrossing. That will make it so that the nearest bus stop on Soquel Drive at Thurber Lane is within about half a mile walking distance of the Kaiser facility, a proposed Kaiser facility. So yeah, and then phase 2 of this project, which goes from 41st Avenue to State Park Drive, is also fully funded, and we expect that to start construction in 2023. The final phase of this project, which is also the most difficult, going through Aptos and addressing what's affectionately known as the Aptos Strangler, which is where Soquel Drive and the highway both have to cross Aptos Creek, and there's 2 crossings of the rail corridor there as well. We are seeking funding for that. We did have a huge development in that we got $30 million allocated for this section of the project from the Federal Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And that doesn't fully fund the project, but it's a huge step forward That funding will also include 4 all-electric buses to run both on Highway 1 and SoCal Drive, paralleling the Highway 1 route. And this is really incredible that we got this much money from the federal government for this project. We're one of only 9 mega grants nationwide with a grant of this size, and the only project in California. So that's pretty impressive for a small community of Santa Cruz that's less than 1% of the state population, and really has to do with the way that we've been thinking about transportation in our community as multimodal. So the state has been drawing back on just funding highway widening projects, and they want to see projects that incorporate transit as well as better bike and pedestrian access. And thanks to Measure D, which the voters passed in 2016, that includes a multimodal expenditure plan, which means that we're going to, we've dedicated local money to all kinds of different transportation projects. And because of that, we're able to provide a local match and then draw down some of these mega grants, both from the state and federal government. Of course, the other mega sized grant that we've received recently is for the Coastal Rail Trail. It's you might have heard of. It's a $105 million state grant for segments 8 and 9, which go from the boardwalk and then up to 17th Avenue in the heart of Live Oak by Simpkins Swim Center, and then segments 10 and 11, which continue all the way to State Park Drive in Aptos. I mean, again, just amazing that our small county was able to get this much money. $105 million is 13% of everything that was available statewide. And again, we're about half of 1% of the state population. So really just goes to show you that both the state and federal government see us as a role model and sees our projects as having regional significance and being a demonstration for many other communities. So this is the overall schedule for the rail trail right now. So there's a bunch of different segments. Again, there's the segment that goes from California Avenue, well, it's split, but from California down to the boardwalk. That's segment 7, phase 2, just broke ground in the fall and is in the middle of construction. So segments 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, which just got funding, as I said, are in the middle of environmental review, as is segment 12, which goes through Aptos and is really tied to that phase 3 of the highway project. We've seen the draft of the segment 8 and 9 environmental impact report, and the segments 10, 11, and 12 environmental impact reports are expected spring of this year or summer. And then after that, they'll have to go into final design. And we'll probably see construction starting for the boardwalk and up to 17th Avenue around fall of 2024 or early 2025, and then for the other segments at the end of 2025 or possibly early 2026. These projects do have a way of taking a little bit longer than we expect, and even this table is, I think, a couple months old now, so things will creep into the future. Some good news, we were able at our last meeting in 2022 to acquire the 5300 SoCal Avenue for a youth mental health crisis center. This is badly needed in our community. Currently, any youth that are having some kind of mental health crisis and need long-term residential care are sent out of the county, which of course is just totally backwards, given they're in the middle of a crisis and need to be close to family and friends, and we're sending them further away just because we don't have a bed for them. So this is, we're going to get 16 new residential care beds, up from none right now. And then even our short-term treatment and stay will be improved. We'll have 8 short-term beds, up from just anywhere from 0 to 4 chairs currently. Right now, our crisis stabilization unit, which is on SoCal Avenue, frequently exceeds capacity and has to send folks to the Dominican Hospital ER. They have also been at capacity. So this new facility can't come soon enough. I would expect doors to open in the next year or so. And this acquisition is really means that the whole Sheriff Center complex will now be in public hands. This was the last building. It was previously owned by Bay Fed, or it's still during this process owned by Bay Fed. With the county's acquisition of it, we'll own then that whole campus for public safety and justice. And we've been able to purchase it thanks to a number of different state grants that total about $24 million. So definitely our county, again, getting our share of the historic state budget surplus that we saw last year. Of course, the state is planning on tightening its belt considerably this coming year, given they're now projecting a deficit of about, I think, $22 billion last I saw. Finally, I'll just mention a couple of other meetings that will be happening specifically around some proposed developments. One, 960 Maciel Avenue. This proposal is for 21 single-family homes, and the meeting will be next Tuesday, the 17th at 6 p.m. This meeting is going to be live at the community room in the Sheriff Center. I was just talking about 5200 Soquel Avenue. And then the other project is at 841 Capitola Road. This is a proposal for 15 single-family homes. This will be the following day, Wednesday, the 18th at 7 p.m. And this is going to be a digital or Zoom meeting. So the link is there. I think we also included it in the last email, and we'll be sure to continue to post it so that folks can attend. That's all I've got for slides, and I'm happy to take any questions now. If you do have a question or comment, you can raise your hand using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and clicking the raise hand button. And the first person I see here is Charles Perrone. So I'll just go ahead and unmute you.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, I'm Charles Perrone. I live on Maciel, right in front of 1960. And my question is this, is there in fact a Zoom connection for this meeting on the 17th? Because the letter we got in the mail said you're invited to an in-person meeting. And since we're still in pandemic mode, an in-person meeting is an invitation not to go. So my question is, as the county said, excuse me, you have to have a Zoom meeting like this one we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is it's only in person. I don't think that we have a requirement in our code for a Zoom meeting. I can certainly reach out to the developer and request that they make it hybrid.
Yeah, because what you just put up on screen right now said Zoom. So I said, oh, maybe they realized that they should Zoom this.
No, that was for the other proposed development, 841 Capitola Road.
Okay.
That will be entirely, that's a totally different builder. Okay. I'll certainly let the 1961 applicant know that a Zoom meeting would be appreciated.
And if not, can we do a FaceTime or any other telephonic way of communicating with somebody who has a cell phone at the meeting to be able to hear what's going on and also to participate in any way? Zoom would be the best, of course, but there's these other technologies like FaceTime and other things that are on the iPhone.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Yeah, I'll reach out to the developer and see if we can make it a hybrid meeting. Of course, hosted numerous hybrid meetings.
Okay, and if
location, it's probably one of our best tech centers or rooms around, so it should definitely be feasible. And if not, if then we'll find another way for you to get questions or make a comment.
Like does your staff take the cell phone to the meeting and use FaceTime or any of those other communication technologies?
Yeah, me and staff will definitely be there in the room with the cell phone. So
okay.
like I said, we'll find a way to help make sure you can get a comment if you don't feel comfortable attending in person.
Yeah, the timing for that meeting is, besides the fact that it's in person and unlike tonight, which is free, I had a little 17th is a little conflict for me. So yeah, all of us on the street are anxious to see what comes down at the meeting, and some of us have, I mean, you may have received emails from some of the neighbors who have like 5 or 6 or 7 issues to bring up.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah. If you have specific questions or issues, you're also welcome to send those to me in my office ahead of time as well.
Okay,
So
so
I can make sure they get addressed during the meeting.
okay.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Next is Linda.
Oh.
Linda, I think we can hear you, or we could for a second. Linda, are you seeing the unmute button?
All right, now?
There you go. Yep.
Okay. This is my first time joining you. So maybe you've discussed this before, but I was curious about Lake Moran and all the trees that are being chopped down, making it look like a, parking lot or a, freeway in there rather than a forest. And I was wondering what the situation was with that.
Sure. Yeah, it's always a very delicate balance at Moran Lake with those trees, because it is a monarch butterfly habitat. So all the trees, we have a dedicated botanist for those trees, and a plan for managing them. They're all tagged. If you look closely, you'll see a lot of them will have that little silver number tag on them. The trees that were cut down specifically are suffering from black root rot or some kind of root rot, which basically made them a hazard because they could fall down, especially, of course, when soils are particularly wet like now. And there are, a number of neighbors who are extremely concerned about the trees and are constantly asking me to cut down as many of them as possible, because one has fallen right on someone's house in the past. So the trees that are being cut down, we're only removing ones that are actually a public safety hazard, because we absolutely need to maintain as much monarch butterfly habitat as possible. So that's
what kind of trees have the rot in it that you spoke of?
I believe it's the eucalyptus trees.
Okay, these were not eucalyptus trees that were being chopped down. These were huge, I don't know what kind of trees they are, but regular, fir, whatever kind of trees they were, right in the front by the parking lot entrance to the left of it. You've ripped out a whole, and they aren't eucalyptus trees that were there. And so I was wondering, yeah.
Okay, yeah, right. The ones with the root rot that I was thinking of are kind of where East Cliff makes that elbow over on the other, I think, the other side of Moran Lake than where you're describing. So the other area where we've done the most tree cutting around Moran is right by the parking lot there. I think we had topped a number of those trees in the past when they were damaged or identified as hazardous during a storm. And then the soil right there is particularly sandy, and so that does make those trees also, that's what made them eligible for removal. And they're also outside of the main the monarch butterfly habitat, which is back more towards the sanitation district. So I think in those case of those trees, it was just identified that with the sandy soils, they were a hazard.
And if I may add, Supervisor, we did receive concerns with regards to the cypress trees. And we did ask for the Public Works as well as Parks Department to go out to investigate for any hazards, any hazards that may be posed by the trees in the region. So from that request, there maybe have been particular ones that were identified as being potentially hazardous to the community.
Thank you. And the last thing I'll add is our Parks Department actually is in the middle of a larger sort of environmental restoration study and vision for the park. And so they're certainly trying to, look at what we can do long-term to make it as, as wonderful a natural habitat as possible, for all species, both the monarchs, but also ducks and the fish that live in the pond there. So we will be continuing to look at that. I think that I know there was a questionnaire that went out recently, and I can check in on exactly where they are at with that process, but we're in the middle of a sort of more in lake visioning process. All right. Okay, thanks for your question. Bill Cook, you're up next.
Can you hear me, Manu?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
You're loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for a wonderful meeting. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. So I'm just wondering, the Aptos Strangler, there's those 2 railroad bridges. And what do we know about those? I keep thinking that's going to be extremely expensive.
You're correct. They will be extremely expensive. I think the estimated cost to build them right now, to build the new bike and pedestrian bridges next to the railroad bridges is estimated to cost about $60 million. And just the engineering for them that we approved the other day cost $4 million. And with that project, we do anticipate that some of those large expenditures would have to come out of local Measure D funds, because there's sort of a cap on how much we can ask for from the state. We're requesting about $100 million for the bus on shoulder and auxiliary lane project, as well as some of the other parts of the trail. And the total project is getting close to 200 million. So the 30 million that we're getting from the feds is great. But yeah, those additional bridges over Aptos Creek and Valencia Creek are definitely expensive.
Thank you. And there's no plan for new railroad bridges to go along with that?
Right, to replace the railroad bridges over are also required, and or are planned. I don't know what the cost of those is estimated at off the top of my head, but they're significant. I will add that the funding that we wrote the applications for the rail trail grants really as generally as possible. And as I said, we are in the middle of an environmental impact report studying the best location for the trail. So ultimately, as long as we build a trail, the corridor, that's fine. So we'll see. There's still definitely a lot of pieces in the air on this as far as what we're actually able to build.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. So I mean, I don't want to lead you into saying anything you don't know about. But is it likely to be $100 million for one railroad bridge?
Oh, I don't think it's that much. If I had to, guess at a number, again, this is entirely a guess, I'd say it's probably around $10 to $20 million for those 2 railroad bridges.
Okay.
But it's definitely not 100 million. Like I said, I think the overall cost of the project right now is about $200 million, which is still extremely expensive given we're talking about 1.5 miles.
Yes, certainly. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Bill. All right, next up, Bob Silcott.
This is really a choice. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Your chat is going off. You might need someone to take a look at that. But so I'm just wanted to comment on the Kaiser project. I'm sure you've received my emails in the past, but again, I just wanted to state again that this 160,000 square foot medical facility with 730 parking spaces. It doesn't have a place in our Live Oak neighborhood. We're not designed to support a commercial facility of this size. We already have several dysfunctional intersections, Soquel Ave and Soquel Drive, Gross Road and 41st. I just see this as exacerbating the existing traffic problem, and also condemning the hundreds who would be working at Kaiser and the patients and caregivers who would visit. You mentioned the building of the walkway and now having a bus stop within half a mile, but I think this is still very far for those with mobility issues to get to Kaiser. So I don't think that's a meaningful way to address the fact that there isn't a bus stop in front, and it's a 2-lane road, very different from just the other side of the freeway, which is 4 lanes with a median to turn around in. So again, I just wanted to urge you to, represent us, the Live Oak community, and not necessarily Kaiser. We, I really want somebody who has our best interest at heart, and give us some solutions and not add to our existing traffic nightmare and problems here in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Vilia. You brought up the proximity to the transit stop. We have looked at the possibility of adding, Metro has looked at the possibility of adding a line there. They estimated it costs about $300,000 a year to operate, and our planner did that in another community over in Alameda, and they found that the line was very minimally used. So for folks with mobility issues, there are paracrews and lift line for seniors, so that those are available. Paracrews, of course, is operated by our Metro for people with mobility issues, and those could bring people directly to the door of the facility. I certainly hear your concerns about traffic, and they're echoed by lots of your neighbors. And like I said, the 2 big questions on whether or not the facility is approved will be: A, is Kaiser actually looking out for the interests of and health of everyone in our community through the Access to Care agreement? And B, can we actually identify sufficient transportation mitigation projects so that it doesn't make it impossible to get in and out of the neighborhood? I think that, again, those will be the topics of many meetings to come, and certainly the topic of the final environmental impact report that they're released soon. But thank you for sharing tonight. Susie Bombasi.
I wonder if you could talk about what's being done to prevent more flooding along Soquel Creek. What kind of mitigation efforts are happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Susie. So I had a meeting with our resource conservation district. They really do a lot of the engineering around water flow in our creeks and rivers. And also went out to the creek recently to look at it with them. I think through, we'll be meeting with our Zone 5 flood control district, which does manage Soquel Creek for flooding, as next week to review options as well. I think in the short term, we do have some funding just to remove some of the problem trees where we can see that debris has hit them and started to build up during the high flow events. There's 1 or 2 that we identified close to the Soquel Drive Bridge that I think we could remove. Of course, in general, trees along the banks are actually quite helpful, especially because the soils are kind of sandy. And so if we didn't have trees in general along the edges of the creek, I think we would see massive amounts of erosion. Long term, the flooding that is happening there, we could look at opportunities to fund some kind of more significant project through the Zone 5 flood control district, and sort of similar to all these transportation projects I've been discussing. It would probably require some kind of local match with the new assessment, either specifically for people in Soquel Village, or maybe the burden could be shared throughout Zone 5, which is much larger. Since we all use those central business districts around Soquel Village, Capitola Village, which is also in Zone 5, and then we could probably draw down some significant state funds for a project as well. Like I said, that's similar to the transportation projects, and was also pursued recently for a project in Rio Del Mar, where the residents voted not to increase their assessment at all, and ultimately then we lost $5 million in state funding towards a project that had already been earmarked and was available to us. So those are some of the things that I'll be looking at, both short term and long term. I mean, as far as, hopefully the two atmospheric rivers coming in over the weekend, I don't think we're anticipating them to be significant enough to cause another flood. Of course, we'll be monitoring it closely, and there's also on the county's disaster resource page, there's also a link that has stream levels, creek levels, and so you can find that and track where the creek's at. So we're hoping it's not going to flood again, but there's just some areas, particularly behind Old Mill Mobile Home Park, where the stream channel is extremely narrow, and I think that's ultimately what's leading it to flood through that park and then into other parts of the village. Okay, we'll move along then to Annika Spinoza.
Hello, so I know somebody already talked about the medical center that was planning to be built with the large parking lot. And
Sorry, it looks like you went back on mute. Annika, if you could unmute yourself again.
I'm sorry about that. So basically I don't agree with that, and I think that it would, as the other person said, cause a big issue and just is not necessary to be built. And I think it'd be better to build some.
You went on mute again there. Let's try one more time.
I think that a Freemason temple should be.
Okay, thanks.
But I had a serious
Comment
question
from-
about what he brought up, which was when we did have the Zoom meeting about the Kaiser proposal, myself and other people brought up the comparison between the Kaiser plan and the PAMP frame. That the good thing about PAMP is it's spread out. It's east side, it's west side, it's Capitola, it's Soquel. So it's not all conglomerated in one big spot where you get a lot of traffic problems and a lot of congestion problems, et cetera. So I said, why can't Kaiser come up with a program, with a proposal like that? It would be much nicer to divide their huge complex into like 7 or 8 different things, just like PAMP. There's a model out there to follow. So I'm wondering if that was ever brought up with Kaiser.
I don't know if that's a good question, Charles. I don't know if that specific question was ever addressed. I mean, of course, Kaiser does have facilities spread throughout the county. They've got one in downtown Santa Cruz. They've got one in Watsonville. And maybe they don't have one I'm not sure if they have one in Scotts Valley, but anyway, this is specifically to house specialists. And I think that's why this one is supposed to be a little bit larger, and also because it would be the most accessible in the middle of the county. But yeah, definitely not the only Kaiser facility in the community. But point taken about the size and impact. All right, next up, David Dean.
There we go. I am also concerned about the size of the Kaiser facility, the sheer immense number of parking spaces. At an earlier town hall, you said that that the Board of Supervisors may be able to get some concessions from the developers. Have any concessions been requested? Are you going to be trying to mitigate some of this traffic and parking?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I mean, we have discussed a list of projects that I think went into about $10 million, everything from bike lanes, additional sidewalk over Rodeo Creek, improving the entry exit on or entry onto 41st Avenue from Soquel Avenue there. So we've definitely discussed and tried to get as many concessions as possible. So much so, in fact, that we started to get some pushback, and we're coming up against basically what's called the nexus of proportionality. So ultimately, we can only legally get as much many projects as we think this particular project will actually have an impact on or require. So that's why, in my mind, the light at South Rodeo Gulch continues to rise to the top as one that we really need to see in place to ensure that the neighborhood that will be most impacted also has easy access in and out. Another one is speed bumps on Maciel and Madison. I think that we're going to get a deeper dive into the various projects being considered at the developers meeting that they host here at the beginning of February.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Mark?
You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Mark Van de Paul. This concerns a proposal of mine that I've made occasionally to the Board of Supervisors. It relates to the recent shutdown of Highway 17 and the one that we had in 2017. In the latter, we had a backup of over 2 miles of cars on a single lane road that was covered with, had muddy spots, people trying to turn around, people panicking. It was a borderline disaster. This last time we almost lost a garbage truck off the side of the road that had and they shut down 17, so people were redirected Mountain Charlie. It's the only route between Summit and Scotts Valley. And so I'm thinking that this county doesn't really have the staff in the sheriff's office to man and control traffic in a situation like this, but that it does have the funds to deputize volunteers with specific powers to control traffic and to tell people to turn around if it looks like they can't, if their vehicle can't handle it, to communicate with each other with radios, and to convoy cars in groups down the road so that we can actually get reasonable amounts of traffic, get people off the road if we need to get emergency vehicles by, all that stuff. And it would just cost some radios and some training and some vests, and it would solve a problem that could then be replicated on other single lane arterials where traffic control under emergency circumstances is just really it's out of control. And so I'm just trying to save lives and property and do it on the cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And if that sounds reasonable, I'm hoping I can get some help in waking up the sheriff's department to help coordinate kind of a technical advisory committee, if you will, of people that would then suggest ideas and sort of tie this up into a concrete proposal that could then be budgeted for a very minor amount of money.
Well, thanks, Mark. That is an interesting idea. I certainly like it. Like it on the face of the matter. I've certainly thought about ways that we could try to get more citizen volunteers involved in all kinds of things. I know when I've discussed it, for example, in terms of like pothole vigilantes type program with Public Works, often what we come up against is insurance and the liability the county is going to assume. But I find this compelling enough, and as you said, in this case, we're not actually asking volunteers to do construction work, so I think the role of volunteers would be a little less involved or precarious. So it's certainly something I'm happy to discuss more with Public Works and the sheriff. Of course, we have volunteers in the sheriff's department, so maybe that would be another sort of avenue that we could use as
deputies.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked at there are liabilities though that the county holds that any ambulance chaser can slowly figure out, that if something was not done with it that was within its power, then the county inherits those liabilities for those disasters anyway. It's like I've done turnouts on this road for purposes of facilitating people get by. And then when I needed to do another one, the engineers looked at it and said, oh, that'll have to have a guardrail. Excuse me, guardrails on Mountain Charlie? How many miles of them would you need?
A lot,
for
yeah.
a turnout? Are you crazy? So this fear of lawyers, if you will, just becomes an excuse for not doing anything. And at that point, some push from the top really would help in organizing people and realizing that they're not going to own this individually. It's just making less of a problem that's going to cost somebody anyway eventually. So
Certainly. Well, yeah, thank you for the suggestion. I'll definitely research it a little bit more. I've seen some of your emails come into the board email, so I think I've got your contact information that way, and I'll follow up. I mean, of course, it's not just a resource that would be valuable on Mountain Charlie Road, but also, I mean, lots of county roads,
of course,
in these disasters. So
just thinking of it as a
look into
model,
that
if
further.
you will.
Yeah.
So pilot project, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to have some of those discussions and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the idea. Teresa.
Yeah, hi there. Sorry, I jumped on a little late, so I missed if you had some presentation or information that you gave out about the Kaiser project. It sounds like the county has proposed certain things. I just heard you mention the stoplight at South Rodeo Gulch. Sounds like what was going to the city of Capitola was that you were looking to close, or they are looking to close off Gross Road at 40th. So some information's out there. I'm wondering, can you share the basic information? Because then the Capitola City Council item got postponed, and they say because of public hearings on the 8th and the 14th. Are those already scheduled?
So here, let me go ahead and pull up that slide again for you that has the information. So I think you said the public hearing on the 8th with the County Planning Commission, that is sort of tentatively scheduled. There's a couple things that will have to happen before a Planning Commission hearing. First of all, the final environmental impact report has to be published. The goal would be to have that out at least 10 days before the Planning Commission hearing. So that would put it around January 29th. The board will also have to review the access to care agreement in terms of Kaiser's support for our health system in the county as a whole. And then the developer will have to have a community meeting, and then that's really where they'll dive into their proposed traffic impact mitigation projects more deeply.
Okay, can you have them schedule that community meeting soon, because we're already mid-January? It'd be nice for folks to have, more than a couple weeks notice on that.
Certainly. I've been pushing them now for the last month and a half, and it was going to be in January, and things have continue to get pushed back. So again, that's why I say February 8th is a tentative date. They absolutely have to have that meeting before the Planning Commission meeting. So, if the Planning Commission meeting needs to get pushed back because they haven't had their community meeting, so be it.
Okay, but it sounds like there's certain things. I mean, somebody else mentioned the bus stop still is a half mile away. I mean, that's just shameful if the county were to allow that. I mean, I've been a transportation planner in this county for 35 years. To think that you're planning a medical facility for 20, 40, 50 years to not have transit and not have the forethought to put that in now, I've made those comments earlier in the first round, but I think that would just be outright shameful for the county not to require that and to make them pay for the metro service. I mean, that's part of their concession to do this. And even if it's $300,000 a year, other people will use that service. It's going to serve other things, not just the medical facility. But anyway, I look forward to seeing, and if you can get any information on what you've been pushing for, what some other people have said, that you're speaking actually in supporting the neighbors in the community over Kaiser. I think that's really important to show. So, okay, I really appreciate getting this recap here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Teresa. Thank you for the suggestion too, making them just pay for the Metro service, even if it's $300,000 a year. Okay, Marty Pico, you're next.
Hi, Manu. Sorry, I'm in a car right now. Just give me a second. I'm driving because there's no internet at my house, actually. First I wanted to say, good job on getting the youth mental health facility purchased. My son could have used that some years ago, and unfortunately at the time he had to go to Sacramento to take care of that. So it's just really awesome that we've got that in the county now. But actually I wanted to ask about if there's any plans to work with Verizon or AT&T to improve cell coverage in the mountain areas that would help for emergency situations like this one. You know, for example, myself, I have no cell phone or internet of any kind at our house now, and the current estimate is something like end of January for that to happen, before there's any communication at all. I know that when I spoke to Verizon, they said that Santa Cruz County was one of the tougher counties to get more towers into, and so I'm wondering if there's any action on that.
Yeah, good question, Marty. The main action has been to try to make our permitting process for new towers and including smaller cells that can just be put on an existing telephone pole just easier. So it includes like shot clocks, so that I think it can't take more than 60 days. And just the overall permitting process should be much less heavy of a lift. So that was approved last year, and the hope is that under the new framework, it'll be easier to expand coverage in the mountains. I guess one other thing, it's not directly related to cell, but for broadband, there is funding from the state and federal government for middle mile. And so we're putting together a countywide broadband plan that identifies where we can basically get the most bang for our state and federal money buck, in expanding middle mile out into including some of the mountainous areas.
Yeah, that'd be really appreciated. I also wanted to make a quick comment on the earlier gentleman commented about traffic control, which I thought that was a really good idea, by the way, and wondering whether the sheriff could take advantage of the community emergency response team that's put together through the fire departments for that purpose. Because there are people who are trained, and I don't know how much they've been called up in the current, the current goings on, but there is a pool of folks there that presumably could be deployed for that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Actually, Marty, when Mark made his recommendation, I did think about CERT, and that does seem like another group that's already done some amount of training that could potentially be deputized in those situations to help. So good question. I'll definitely bring that up as I have this discussion with the sheriff and their Office of Response, Recovery and Resilience in Public Works.
Yeah, right. Thanks a lot. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. Much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. Steve Plum, you're next.
You need to unmute me. I'm unmuted.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, great. Listen, thank you very much for having the Zoom meeting. I think that's really helpful, and a big yahoo to all this incredible amount of money that we've been able to corral for Santa Cruz County. I think that's just going to make a huge difference. And I think the county staff has done an amazing job getting those grants together. So thank you for that. The question I wanted to make was regarding the Kaiser facility and the access to care agreement. It's a really complicated system providing healthcare in this county. You made the comment earlier that over half of our residents are on government funded healthcare, and if you look over the hill, very few of those people are. And so a lot of very healthy healthcare systems are functioning over the hill. It's a lot tougher here. And we do need some assistance from Kaiser to take care of those patients that aren't Kaiser participants and can fall through the cracks. Is the access to care agreement, is that an effort to get the Kaiser physicians and facilities to care for government patients, or is it mostly just a tax of some sort that says, okay, if you're going to come in, you need to invest money and help pay us so we can provide the care ourselves? How is that going to work? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, it's a little bit more the former. So actually getting Kaiser physicians to provide care to folks on Medicare and Medi-Cal. Particularly because this facility would house primarily specialists to make those specialists available to folks who are in the federally qualified health centers like Santa Cruz Community Health, et cetera, but need access to the specialty services. So yeah, that's definitely part of it. As soon as we get it published, I'm happy to share it with you. I definitely would appreciate the input on the agreement from you, Dr. Plum, and others at Dominican and at Sutter and PAMF.
Presently, a lot of the specialty services for Kaiser patients is being taken over the hill. Is there going to be some effort to try to get them to provide that care locally?
I don't know if that's a specific part of the agreement. I mean, other than, of course, by locating this facility here with specialists, they're making the argument that there'll be more people receiving specialty care in county than out of county. And of course, that kind of factors into their traffic impact calculations. And they're saying this facility will reduce vehicle miles traveled overall. But if there's I know there's some particular specialties that would probably still have to get sent over the hill.
Are they going to have a surgical facility in the building?
I believe not, but I can't say for sure.
All right, thank you very much. Again, thanks for the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Plum. Okay, I think I'm gonna guess, given all the trouble we had earlier with people bombing the meeting, and I apologize for that. Troy, I don't recognize your name or see a face. If you could add so I'm not going to unmute you unless you can give me some kind of last name or, okay. Sorry, Valia is vouching for you, so I'll go ahead and unmute you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Added my name there. Yeah, I joined the meeting late. I was out of town and was at the Capitola City meeting, and it looks like item 9C got pulled from the agenda, and it looks like they're looking to hear something more from the county meeting on February 8th. I think it got pushed to February 9th. So for any of the people interested in the whole Kaiser project, FYI. But I was wondering, has there been much discussion about Kaiser here tonight? I'm kind of late to the meeting. I was just kind of surprised what they submitted to the city of Capitola. Again, they put the diverter in there suggesting that they're going to open up 40th, and all that would do is just jam up Claire's and 40th. I think if I were one of the 6 owners of the mall or the shopping center, I'd be pretty alarmed about all that. And again, it does nothing to help us here on Gross Road in terms of alleviating traffic or, in my mind, making the traffic situation any better if they were to move in. So have I missed anything monumental about the discussion, or have you taken a position on the project? Thank you.
So we have, thank you, Troy. Yeah, we have talked about Kaiser. I can pull up the slide one last time here for you, but I mean, not too much the details of the specific transportation projects there that the applicant is proposing, but basically a few things need to happen now. First, the next thing is that we should see a final environmental impact report published right around the end of this month. We also have to review an access to care agreement, which talks about how Kaiser would help support healthcare for everyone in our communities, particularly focused on Medicare and Medi-Cal. The developer actually has to have a community meeting themselves where we'll really get into exactly what they're proposing in terms of traffic mitigation projects. And that has to be before the planning commission meeting, county planning commission meeting. So that'll, we presume, sometime be early February. And then the planning commission meeting, what could happen. So that's why I think February 8th or 9th, as you said, is the tentative date there. Heard some feedback from people now, but I think we'll know more about specifically what they're proposing at the February 8th meeting. I certainly agree that there needs to be safe ingress and egress from the neighborhood. So that was one of the things that I heard loud and clear at the last community meeting, specifically on this, and in particular around access at South Rodeo Gulch. Whether that's I think we looked at stop signs, but those might not be feasible. So then at least a stoplight there.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, because yeah, I mean, just walk around Gross Road here, and it's like every other house is like an elderly couple, and or there's children, and so heaven forbid anyone would need emergency services, and our streets have been impacted because of this project. It would be a shame. So yeah, let's see. I had one more thought. Let's see. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. All right, that brings us, I don't see any further hands. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I always appreciate your comments and questions, and stay safe as the next atmospheric river storms come in tomorrow and through the weekend. And I hope you can volunteer or donate to help some of those getting hit harder by these storms. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good night.